Diony George presents Torn Apart, based on a true story. Allison thinks her life is perfect. Hectic and tiring, of course, but no more so than any other wife and mother of 4 boys. But with her husband becoming increasingly distant, Allison wonders what could be wrong. Then, like a stone hitting a piece of glass, her life is shattered. She discovers a secret her husband desperately tried to hide. A secret that changed her life forever. Allison never imagined it could happen to her, and when it did, she realized it could happen to anyone. Based on a true story, the author's own Torn Apart is a heart-wrenchingly inside look at how pornography can destroy a person, a marriage, and a family. But more importantly, Torn Apart is a story offering hope that through God's love, even this devastating addiction can be overcome. Torn Apart by Diony George. Richard Paul Evans, New York Times best-selling author, says a story from which anyone can learn. www.tornapartbyporn.com. Welcome back to Turning the Tide. This is Candace, Salima. We have just finished a wonderful interview with Dr. David Ridley of the what is that called? The Wellspring Wellness Clinic. Now we are going to be speaking with author Diony George. She is the author of the book Torn Apart, and it is a powerful book on pornography and the damage it does to a family. Diony.
I'm really excited to have you on today. We just finished speaking with Dr. David Ridley, who is a marriage and family therapist of the Wellspring Wellness Clinic, and we talked about pornography and how insidious it is. And the reason that I wanted to interview you is because of your book, Torn Apart, and that was based on a true story, which was your story, right?
Yes.
Okay, and so from what I can understand, it was a look at how pornography can rip families apart and shatter the lives of everyone involved. And so as I have done my research on the topic, Diony, I have realized that sadly, the effects of pornography are cancerous. And not only that, as I did my research, I found that the pornography industry in 1 year is a $97.06 billion industry. And so the reason that I wanted to have you on my show today was to talk about your own personal experiences and what it did to your family and the ultimate result of a pornography addiction in your family. So if you wouldn't mind telling us a little bit about you first, and then we'll get into the details, okay?
I will, absolutely. I guess from the age of a young girl on, I knew the direction I wanted to go in my life, and I always made specific choices and decisions to stay on a path that would get me there. I wanted to be married to a Christian man who shared my same values, and I wanted to become a mother. And I was certain accomplishing my goals would bring me the most happiness. I remember my wedding day was beautiful. It was sunny and it had blue skies, and that morning as I got ready, I could hardly believe that the dreamed about day had come. And I felt certain that I had made the right choice. And I had no idea that my husband had been keeping a horrible secret. And 5 months later, I was expecting our first baby, and when he joined our family, I felt certain that my life was close to perfect. And it was years before I realized that the reflection of us that I saw on our wedding day had hairline cracks. And those cracks had a name, which was pornography. And eventually, like you mentioned, it shattered the glass completely, and it changed our lives forever. During the last several months of my 14-year marriage, as the secrecy of my husband's repeated infidelity and our financial situation and his pornography use unraveled, it was the worst time I'd ever experienced. And I was constantly on an emotional roller coaster. But because I had already developed a close relationship with God, prayer was my anchor. And that is what got me through.
Diony, let me ask you this. What were the first symptoms? What did When did you notice, and what was it that you noticed that there was first a problem? And did you know immediately that it was a pornography problem, or did you see symptoms of it before you recognized the actual problem?
Right. I definitely, there were symptoms, and looking back, we can always see 2020, because during the time as those symptoms were going on, I didn't notice them as that. I didn't realize that he had a problem with pornography, or that was what was going on. But I had questions. There were things that just came in my mind that just didn't feel right when I was with him, and some of the things he talked about and the things he told me, and the way he interacted with other women, for example, and it just didn't feel completely right to me. But actually, I didn't find out until we had filed for a divorce that pornography was the core of the problem. And he had gotten involved in that he had gotten involved with it as a teenager, and that was something that he struggled with from then on. And once the home computers and the internet kind of took off, he just had so much more access to pornography that his addiction just completely escalated. And then it got to the point to where he was, like I mentioned in my book, he went to a prostitute. He was just involved with other relationships. There was just a lot of secrecy going on. And our life just kind of fell apart. The man that I knew, the man that I had loved, suddenly became a stranger. And so really for me, looking back was how I could put all the pieces together and realize, okay, this was what was going on. And I wish I had known sooner, but pornography is something that's done in secret anyway, and it's not something that's always obvious and out in the open. And so I guess I learned the hard way, what the signs were and what was going on.
For other women who may be in the same situation, what would you advise them to look out for from your own experience?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I know for one thing, things are different sexually. For my husband, he seemed to want sex a lot less often, and for me that was really strange. I didn't know what was going on. Something was wrong with me, and he just withdrew from me more. He just, when we were out in public around other women, he was just a lot more flirty. He just seemed like I wasn't the focus in our marriage or in his life anymore. He was just looking so much outward. And
so it was less about building a marriage and more about satisfying the need that pornography had created in him. Is that what I'm understanding?
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's definitely what I would agree.
Okay. All right. This is such a tough thing. As I did my research, I was so stunned at how prevalent it is. And when I was speaking to Dr. Ridley, he actually focuses on pornography addiction for women. And I found out that 1 in every 3 hits to a pornographic website are women. And I did not know that it had become so prevalent that it was affecting both men and women, and it's killing marriages. I remember Marie Osmond saying once that we were having a conversation, and she said that pornography was bad in so many ways, but one of the greatest ways it was horrible is it created an impossible ideal in the man's mind, and that no woman, doesn't matter who she is, could ever meet. And I remember thinking about that and thinking to myself, man, it is like a lose-lose situation no matter how you look at it, because your ex-husband, and he's your ex-husband, you said you were getting into, you figured it out in the divorce. And so
right.
Your ex-husband, from the time he was a teenager, had become so enveloping. I mean, pornography is not something you can just go to once in a while. It is something that constantly draws and pulls if you give into it on a regular
right.
basis, and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it's not enough.
Right.
And that's what you said. You said that eventually the pornography was not enough, and that's when he started the infidelity and everything else that was going on. There is no
right.
way for a marriage to survive that, is there?
I don't know. I think it totally depends on the people involved. It obviously makes it so much harder, but for me in my situation, my husband just kept on lying about it till the very end, and by the time I found out what was really going on and kind of all the pieces had fell into place, it was too late. It just was over. And So it really depends. Now, I think if there was a husband or a wife who was involved in pornography and was upfront with their spouse, look, I have a problem, I want to get through this, I want to save our marriage, I care about you, whatever, then I think that they could work it out. But honesty has to be at the key.
Okay, well then let me ask this. Do you think pornography can be overcome by yourself, or do the people need to seek help?
Oh, I definitely think that it needs to be something that you receive help with. For me, obviously, God's a big part of my life, and so I really believe that turning to Him helps a lot. And then also seeking professional help. And there's a lot of it out there, because the addiction is so horrible that, like you were saying earlier, it isn't something they can just turn off and stop doing. That chemical reaction in their brain they receive from doing pornography is so strong, it's just so completely addicting that they just crave it. And that's the point to where, they need help to be able to break that cycle.
If you can, if you're willing, after your marriage broke up, can you tell me what effect that knowledge had on you as a woman?
Well, I think a lot of times, at least in my own experience, learning about the pornography, just as a woman, I just felt like I wasn't enough as a woman. It's like if I had been prettier or thinner or smarter or whatever, then he would have loved me. I would have been enough. And I'm so grateful that I've learned that is so not true. Again, mentioning about the chemical reaction that they get when they're doing pornography, it's not so much that they're viewing the women or pictures as real things. It's more like it becomes an object that just creates that chemical reaction, that high feeling. And so they're drawn to that more than the fact that it's, a certain women or whatever. And that's something that, I had to learn the hard way, I guess. I talked to so many spouses that have gone through this, and with my book and everything, and they have all voiced the same thing. They just felt like they just weren't much of a woman anymore, that something was wrong with them, and it had to be their fault. And to realize that that's not true, to realize it's not your fault as a woman, it's very freeing, and it helps you to heal.
Tell me how long it takes to come to understand something like, do women eventually understand that it is not them? Or are there some women who stay trapped in the, if I'd been prettier, smarter, thinner, blah, blah, blah? Right.
I think the ones that are willing to get out and get help and, support groups and talk to other women and, read books like mine or whatever, they can realize that it isn't about them, and that's what helps them move on, I think, in their life and to heal and to make that progress. Because it's so easy to blame ourselves, but when you realize the facts, and you don't know the facts until you do research, until you talk to others, get counseling, that kind of thing, then you realize, no, it's not about you, and it's not your fault, and that makes such a difference in how you view the whole situation.
So what advice do you give to women who, or husbands actually, who find themselves with a spouse that are so addicted to pornography that there's no salvaging of the marriage? What advice do you have for them that there's actually hope out there?
Well, there absolutely is hope, and I've definitely found that in my situation. I was able to meet an amazing man after my divorce, and I never thought marriage could be so great. And I think,
glad.
And that's, and I think a lot of it is just, having that faith and that hope that, okay, I can get through this. Even though it's hard, I can do this. Others out there have gotten through it. My life can be happy again. And just like with any, tragedy we face, it's really easy to feel like, I want to just give up. It's too hard. But if you have the attitude, no, I can get through this, even if you just take it, one day at a time. There were days, I remember the pain was so intense that I was on my knees praying to just get through the next hour. But as you do get through it, and as you become stronger, you do heal, and you do find that life can be great again, and you can learn to trust someone else. And, it's not the end of the world. It's horrible and it's painful, but there absolutely is hope, and there is help for those who really want it.
Okay, and that's the next question I wanted to ask. How difficult was it for you to learn to trust your next husband, that you were willing to fall in love and be married again?
Right, exactly. And that was, that was a concern absolutely when I started dating again and thinking, how can I ever trust somebody again after what I've been through? But my husband, he's just amazing. I think from the very beginning we just had a really open relationship, and that was something that my first husband I didn't have. He kept a lot of things obviously in the dark. He didn't, he hid a lot of things and didn't tell me the truth. And so when you base a relationship on that, it's almost doomed to fail, you would think, because you don't have that honesty, and that's the key to a successful relationship. And that was something that I just looked for when I was dating somebody who was honest, somebody who was willing to listen and be very open. And then it's just, I guess, you kind of go off your gut feeling too. You just feel when it's right, I think. And for me, with him, it was such a difference, a different feeling that it was going to be right with him. And I just didn't, I was scared, of course. I mean, the fear doesn't ever go completely away. But there was peace in my heart that I was making the right decision to remarry. And a lot of that, again, also comes from my religious beliefs. And plus, you have to just have a step of courage too, and realize, okay, it might not be perfect. There's always a chance it could fall apart, but at the same time, it could be wonderful and amazing. And you have to be willing and open to try again.
Okay, tell me how much of a role God played in this, and you have referred to it several times, and that's why I'm thinking that He played a huge role. Why and did you turn to Him, and what did you receive that helped you to get through this?
Yes, I've always had a very close relationship with God, and for me in my life, I mean, He's just my anchor. He's always there for me. I turn to Him for anything, and I've developed that obviously over the years of my life. And so when something just difficult and horrible happened to me, I had that anchor in place. I was able to turn to Him, and through Him, I got that strength and that comfort and that peace, and the inspirations I needed to make decisions for myself and my children, and how to move forward with my future. He was there for me, and that was just I could have got through it without Him, and that's totally how I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that one. I have acquaintances who are going through the same thing, which is what prompted me to do this show. And it's rough. It's rough to watch people suffer through this type of addiction and the fallout that comes onto the family at the same time. And so it's been interesting as I've been doing the research, as I, getting down to the hard, cold clinical facts of how much is being spent on pornography. And actually, every second, $3,075.64 is being spent on pornography. And every second, 28,258 internet users are viewing pornography. And every second, 372 internet users are typing adult search terms into search engines. And every 39 minutes, a new pornographic video is being created in the United States. Now, when they broke it down by nation, the United States was actually number 6. China was number 1. So this is a problem that is prevalent throughout the entire world.
Right.
And I look at what is going on and how, you type in something wrong on the internet, bam, you're hit with porn. At any given moment as you're scanning through channels, you can see anything, even on the network stations. And I think that we are headed in a direction that shows how deeply America has abandoned its values and principles. Can you tell me how important you think values and principles are in a life, in a family, and especially in a family that's been hit with the pornography problem?
Right. Well, I think if you don't have values and principles in a family, and you're not committed to one another, you can't keep a family together, right? Especially, in today's world and all of the things that are going on that are tearing the family apart, that are tearing marriages apart. You see how high the divorce rate is, and you see, results from broken homes and children that run away, and, unwed pregnancies, and all of these things they go through as a result from having a broken home. And so, just something that I really believe after going through what I went through is we need to educate our children at a younger age about pornography and about how dangerous it is. Because a lot of times I think we wait until we think they're old enough to be dealing with that or whatever, but the truth is they're facing those kind of things at a younger and younger age.
They really are. Tell me how young you think you should start talking to them, and how do you broach that conversation?
Well, I had an experience with my son. He was only 7, and at school on recess, an older boy told him about a website that he should go check out. And luckily, I found out about it before he got online, and it was Playboy.com, and he had no idea what that meant, and he just went because someone told him it was really cool. Go check it out. And so, 7, that's such a young age. And then I have a friend, whose 9-year-old son became addicted to pornography. And so it's just mind-blowing how early these children can actually have a problem with it. And so, again, it's just the need to talk with them at a young age and to be open with them. And obviously you want to give them, age-appropriate information.
So what did you say to your son when he came home and said he was going to check out this new great website, Playboy.com? What did you say? How did you explain what Playboy was?
Well, I think first I was just kind of in shock.
I'll bet you were.
I was like, what? And, and so my husband and I just sat him down together and we just said, this is actually not a good website. This has some bad things on it. And we didn't go into a lot of detail because I didn't think at that point it was appropriate, but we just told him that, if he had a question about a website or someone told him to get on something again, he could come talk with us. We could answer any questions with him, and he wouldn't be in trouble. That was something he was worried about. And so it's just having that open line of communication that your kids feel like they can come to you and they can trust you. And so when there is a concern, you can have that. You can work it out with them, and they can hopefully avoid those kind of issues, later on.
Yeah, hopefully it is a scary world that we live in, Diony. I look at what kids have to face these days, and they are facing these types of things much, much earlier than I ever had to face them. And
right.
Yeah, I did not see my first pornography until I was a teenager and babysitting, and the little boys thought it'd be funny to tape it to the front door.
Oh, yeah.
I was not amused.
Right.
But now you're saying 7, and these kids were actually 5 and 7 who did it. So they'd gotten into their moms. And so For me, I think that pornography, for both men and women, objectifies what should be a very sacred and beautiful act that should be reserved within the bounds of marriage. And it not only objectifies, it degrades and destroys that which is to be unique between a husband and wife. And I don't know what direction to go in to help people to understand how insidious and cancerous pornography is and how much damage that it does. Because, it's openly discussed on television. It's openly discussed by people. There doesn't seem to be the shame that there used to be. There still is in the Christian communities, but people who have turned their back on their faith driven upbringings have no shame in it. And it seems to me that stories like yours need to get out there more and more and more. Your book, Torn Apart, which I got the details on Amazon.com, is one that can help people. It's a fictionalized version of what happened in your life, correct?
Right.
Tell me why you decided to write the book.
Well, it's something that I certainly hadn't really planned to do. Going through it was horrible, and it wasn't like I wanted to go advertise what I was facing with. It was difficult, it was private, it was painful, all of those things. But just a few years later, I just kept having this feeling that I needed to share my story and what I went through to help somebody else. And I hadn't written a book before, so I was like, how do I do this? How do I start? But honestly, I just really felt like I was guided by God to write it, and He helped me, and the words came, and it was a long process to get it published and all of that. But from the women that I've talked to and the men who have come back and have thanked me and have said, this sounds like my life. That's just made it so worth it.
Yeah, because I can imagine. Tell me what kind of responses people have had.
I have had a lot of really great responses. I've had letters from women. I've had phone calls. I actually have gotten several letters from a man that is incarcerated, and he is in there because of some sexual-related crimes he committed, and he for whatever reason, he found my book there, and he read it, and he just said, I just want to thank you so much. I wish this was out for people to see, and people could realize, what a bad problem it is, and that there can be hope. He was just on and on about how grateful he was that I wrote that and how remorseful he was for the choices that he had made and the signs that he saw in his own marriage, just pulling away from his spouse and ignoring problems and the road that it took him down, which, ultimately destroyed his marriage and put him in jail. And so those kind of comments, those kind of stories, they're just so inspiring to me. I just feel like, okay, it's all worth it. So I feel like, my book is so personal. People read it and they're like, I feel like I know you so well, and of course to me they're a stranger, and that's kind of a weird feeling, and sometimes it's a little bit intimidating.
Yes,
but,
I can imagine.
Right, but to see the help that it's helped or it's given other people in their lives, that's just been so rewarding and so gratifying for me, and so, I feel like it's absolutely been worth it.
Well, and something you said about the inmate who got a hold of you, I remember watching Ted Bundy's last interview, and he, of course, was a very well-known serial killer. And he talked about how his first exposure to pornography was at 5 years of age. And it was his parents who showed it to him. And so before, in his very formative years, very formative, he was exposed to something that taught him early on that women were nothing more than I don't even know what. It was a scary, horrifying, very troubling interview, and he was actually put to death the next day. Mm-hmm. And as I listened to it, he literally ascribed everything, that all his thought processes and the way he put things together and why he killed people, to that early introduction to pornography. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, but it does seem to be a prevalent and common denominator amongst rapists and sexual sadist serial killers. And I don't think people understand that it is not harmless.
Right.
What do you think?
Definitely. I think, so many don't. They think it's not a big deal. It's just something that, labeling guys again. Oh, guys are always into that kind of thing. And, of course, now we talked about it, a lot more women are in it, too. But and so many of them just dismiss it as, it's a form of art, it's freedom of expression. It doesn't really cause any problems. It's good, and that's so sad because, when I look at what I've gone through and others have gone through, it's like there's nobody anywhere that can tell me that pornography isn't harmful to a family, harmful to a marriage, harmful to a person.
Without question. Yeah, I mean, and not to say that your ex-husband is going to go become a serial killer. That's not what I'm trying to say. But if you have a child or a young man who already has a proclivity towards that, and then they are exposed to pornography, which teaches them the objectification and degradation of women and men, they are going to internalize that, and it's going to be that much worse, the behavior that they have. And so it is cancerous at all levels, from what people think to be the most innocent, which it is not, to the very worst. There are many levels of pornography and its effects, just like there are many levels of everything else. And so I don't bring out the Ted Bundy situation to say everyone who views or looks at or reads pornography is going to become a serial killer. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that is the most extreme, and all the way to what happened to you, which shows the common response, the common reaction to what pornography does to a marriage.
Right.
Do you have anything else you want to add about that?
I just actually want to say one thing. When I did my research for my book, and as I learned more about pornography and what the signs are and the path that people go down as they get involved in that, one thing I learned, I just learned so much compassion for these people. I mean, there are a lot of many good women and men that have a pornography addiction today, and they hate the hold that it has gained over them, and they despise what it's done to them and their families, and they want to stop. And I think the more we can bring pornography out in the open, instead of trying to shame people, thinking there's something wrong with them, you're a bad person, you're whatever, instead trying to be compassionate and say, yes, we agree you need help, what can we do to help you? And bring it out in the open so it is more talked about, so it is more recognized, so so in the long run, we can combat to a greater force because we're not keeping it hidden, and we're not shunning those that are involved in it and making them feel like they're just these horrible people. Because there are so many good people and families that, unfortunately, because it's so rampant in our society and so easily accessible, great people are getting involved in it, unfortunately, and the power that it has is so strong. And so we need to have compassion for those people, especially those who want to change, those that are trying to change. They need our support. They need our help.
They do. And there's no question of that, because bad people don't view pornography. It is something that they get sucked into at one point or another by an innocent, which is why the porno companies do what they do. I remember the first time I typed in whitehouse.com, very innocently, might I add, and that was a porn site.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that's when I learned about the .gov extension. That if it wasn't .gov, it was not a government website. But that's how easy it is. That's what I'm trying to say. Another time I was doing research for a screenplay I was writing on a noted religious figure, and I just typed in his name. I Googled his name. Well, actually, I don't know if Google was around then, but anyway, I typed it in to do some research, and it took me straight to a porn site.
Oh, my gosh.
So these porn companies are very clever. They are very insidious. They know exactly what they're doing, and all it takes is you innocently hitting something, and those pictures are forever burned in your brain, and they know it. They know it. And the quickest way to get rid of those pictures in your brain is to get down on your knees and pray really, really hard.
That's an awesome start. Absolutely.
Yeah, and that's what worked for me, because I'll tell you, I even something as simple as I used to use Netscape to be as my browser, and I was at work, and one of the guys came in. He was a bishop in his private life. He came in and wanted something. I said, okay, well, we'll just browse, I'll just type it in, we'll see what we get. And right at that moment, Netscape got hacked by a porn company, and hundreds of screens popped up with porn pictures, and I've got my hands on the screen saying, Bishop, don't look, don't look.
You're kidding. Oh, my God.
It's so simple, and you don't even have to do it on purpose. But if you don't determinedly get that out of your head, do everything you can to get that out of your head, it stays there, and it draws you back.
Right.
Yeah, my biological father was addicted to porn. It was the same situation. And so, I don't know, Diony, your book, Torn Apart, that was written a while ago, I know, but it's still available everywhere, right?
Yeah, it is. I mean, of course, Amazon is the first spot you can go to get something like that, because they carry everything, right?
They sure
and
do.
Then yeah, it's great. And then it's also available as an ebook also. And then on my website, and some of the religious bookstores carry it. Barnes and Noble, you can find it there, that kind of thing. So it's definitely still out there. Yes.
Well, and I think that everyone needs to read it. I really, really do. I think it will help them to understand how important it is, like you said, to prepare their children. We have to prepare them for so much, alcohol and drugs and premarital sex and now pornography. It seems to be a never-ending thing that are inundating our children, and it means that the parents have got to arm themselves with knowledge so that they can help those kids, help their children understand that they can come to them, like you said, to have good open communication paths with your children, and to be able to speak to them about anything. And that is the key. There should be nothing you're embarrassed to speak to your children about, because your children's very future is at risk. Right.
That is just very true. I know we have a thing in our home. My husband always tells our children that if they can come and ask him any kind of word or any kind of thing that they've heard at school, they don't know what it means, or he'll be glad to tell them. He won't be embarrassed. He'll give them the answer. And he was just telling me the other day, it's amazing some of the things they bring to him and say. He's like, things that I never heard about until I was out of high school or married or whatever. And it is, they just hear these things at such a younger age, because it's just so prevalent out there. And if you have that relationship with your children, they aren't afraid to come to you, and they know they won't get in trouble for saying if it's a bad word, and asking you about it, then they're going to be able to do that, and then you're going to be so much farther ahead in helping them be armed against all the garbage that there is out there.
Yeah.
It's got to start in the home.
Yeah, it has to start in the home. Everything starts in the home. I mean, what drives me is the preservation and restoration of America, and I truly believe that the only way we can do that is to heal the family. We have got to get the families more solid again. We've got to make them solid units that can. Oh, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss for words. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, and I totally agree, because that's the foundation of our society, and if the family falls apart, everything else does too.
Yes, Absolutely, the foundation, and that foundation is crumbling, and pornography is one of the things that is chipping away at that foundation. So, Diony, do you have any last thing you would like to say? Any things you would like to cover that I haven't covered yet, that the listeners of Turning the Tide can hear?
I think I just want to go back to a little bit about, you asking me how I got through it and how I healed and all that. And I think also something that's very important is that you have to learn to forgive. There's marriages that can work through this, and there's marriages and relationships that can't. And the only way to ever really find peace inside and to deal with it is to find forgiveness. And I know for me that was so freeing as I was able to forgive my former husband and realize, and find compassion in him, to realize that he was a victim. He was a victim just like me and the children were victims. He was just a victim of a different kind. And
yes,
and you can,
that's true. And what happened to him? Can you tell me? How's he doing now?
Actually, he was killed about a year after our divorce.
Oh my goodness, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, and that's in the book, and it was a difficult thing, but unfortunately, but he wanted to get help, and I don't know how much time he was able to get help because his life was cut short. He was a pilot, and there was an airplane accident that he was involved with. But anyway, but yeah, forgiveness is the only way to get peace back inside. Because I've got friends that, the husbands have done just horrible, horrible things to them. Things like I went through it, and it's just, the pain is just, it's just unreal. I seriously felt like there were times that, how could I feel so much pain and still be alive? It's just so devastating. But for them too, if they haven't been able to, go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say, but you healed. You came out the other side.
Right, and you have to. You have to go on. You can't just roll over and give up and die. Yeah, life is hard, but challenges are what make us stronger. And I've learned so many things from what I went through. I've grown so much. I've been able to help others. It's been a huge blessing in my life. And forgiveness has been a key part of that too, because that's the only way I could let it go truly and move on and have peace about it. And again, that comes back from turning to God, and that was, he was my anchor, like I mentioned before.
Yes, and he's the anchor for everyone, I hope. Anyway,
right.
Okay, Diony, your book is Torn Apart. Do you have any new books out?
Not yet. I do have two that are currently being reviewed by publishers, and one's a nonfiction, and then the other one is a fiction. So they're both kind of different from my first one. But I've discovered that I love to write, and so I keep on plugging away at it, and hopefully at some point I will have some more books out there to share.
Oh, good for you. That's what it's all about. And one of the reasons I wanted to interview you is because you have come out the other side of this, and you are happy, and you are content, and there was a way for you, there was a path for you to find happiness again, and you chose it instead of curling up and just withering away,
Right. Yes. Yeah.
So thank you. Thank you for joining me today. And if you have any last thing you'd like to say, go ahead and say it now. And then we will say goodbye. I thank you so much for joining me and being willing to talk about this very difficult subject.
Thank you, Candace. It's been great to be here with you. And I just hope that, what I did share can help someone else. And that's what we're all here about, helping each other, because we can't make it on our own. And there's too many things out there that are difficult, but there is always hope, always hope. And I firmly believe that with every part of me because of just what I've gone through. And so for anybody who's going through something hard and difficult, just don't give up. Just hang in there. Believe that you can get through it. And someday you will be able to smile again, and you will be able to feel happy again. And you'll also come out being a stronger person.
Oh, there's no question of that.
Yeah.
Strength is the result of trial, isn't it?
Oh,
okay.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. We've been speaking with Diony George, the author of Torn Apart, and I am so grateful, as I said, Diony, for you being willing to come on and talk about this. You have a wonderful day.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.